All right, here we go. A year ago today, the Texans were not leaking any information to anybody, and everybody was freaking out because the prevailing rumor, or at least the most divisive rumor, was that the Texans would take no quarterback at all. Maybe they would take Will Anderson and not a quarterback at all. We know exactly what happened after that. So Nick Caserio comes back with a much different perception surrounding the team. Christopher Robin says this before we get started. Nobody's going to say this, but it seemed to me that Nick was a bit testier than usual. Something, though he wouldn't put it this way, was stuck in his craw. Now I'm looking forward to this because I haven't seen this yet. A lot of you watching this will have watched this already because you're diehards. I have yet to watch the press conference because I had other obligations. So I'm very much looking forward to this. I know there's a Payne and Pendergast reference somewhere in here because Sean texted me about it. So I'm looking forward to that as well. I'm Seth Payne. Used to play for the Texans a long time ago, played 10 years in the NFL. Now I do sports radio on Sports Radio 610 in Houston. That's the Payne and Pendergast that Nick apparently mentioned sometimes in this press conference. I'm going to watch the press conference in its entirety. If this is way too long for you, I get it. I understand. We're just kind of hanging out as we watch the press conference here. I'll cut this up and put out some shorter videos later. So we'll get into the juicy stuff. Don't you worry, my friends. Here's Nick Caserio.
Morning. Uh-oh, bad microphone. So appreciate everybody being here. You're looking forward to next week. Just winding down here with some of our preparations relative to the draft. Number of things going on. I would say organizationally in the building as well. Kind of looking ahead a little bit. So, definitely excited to be part of kind of the Hall of Fame festivities relative to, Andre's induction and involvement. So kind of shortens the off season or shortens the training camp or shortens vacation over the summer. But, to have an opportunity to be a part of that week, really it's a week more than anything. I know the game in and of itself is Thursday night, but, to be there to support Andre and what he's done for the city of Houston, for the organization, and for us to be able to participate in the game. But honestly, it'd be a good opportunity for a number of players. So it's an extra week, an extra game. But, certainly be remiss if didn't mention that. As far as the team is concerned, it's good to have everybody back in the building, or most of the team for the start of the offseason program. Really, it's the first opportunity for the team to get together, spend time really with the strength and conditioning staff. And then next week or the week after that, first week in May, kind of transition to phase 2 and start some of the on-field work with the coaches. And I think really the focus during the offseason is just improvement and work, and then once we're, done here in the off season, try to get ready for training camp and get ready to go. Probably have different players at different stages relative to their development, relative to what they're going to do during the course of spring. But it's good to have everybody in the building, making some modifications to the building, redoing the weight room, shifting some offices. So we've had to, adapt and adjust here a little bit. I think that's emblematic of our program and kind of what we're about. But, I think some of the changes and adjustments that we're making in the building, certainly appreciative of the support that the mayors have given us relative to making the resources available. So, we come back for training camp, coaches' offices will be in a different spot. And it's all designed to help the players and make ourselves accessible to the players, make the coaches available to the players, and make the flow a lot easier on the players. So just a number of things going on just kind of outside of the draft, outside of football. I'd say as it pertains to the draft, certainly excited about the opportunity we have in front of us next week. We have 9 picks as of Thursday night. We'll see if that changes or stays static, but it's given our history, it'll probably change at some point. Finish up some of the draft visits in terms of the players in the building. Had a number of players in the building. Had some players in the building that we really didn't have in the building, but I think that's the way it goes this time of year. There's a lot of information that's floating around. Certainly appreciative of the staff. I'd say our entire football operations staff is really involved, from medical to strength conditioning to player development to scouting to coaching, take part in those visits. Really the goal behind that is to try to simulate as best we can what it's like to be a Houston Texan on a day-to-day basis, and the people that you're going to interface with on a day-to-day basis have an opportunity to meet them and have an understanding of what we're about, and they understand, we understand what they're about. They can learn about us. We can learn about them. So I'm certainly appreciative of the entire football operations staff. I'd say specifically, can't say enough great things about the college scouting staff and the work and the effort that they put into it. we shifted some responsibilities around a little bit, going into last year. We asked to get some guys to take on a little bit more responsibility. I hate to single anybody out, but do it anyways. I think the work that Lip, John Richard, Zeke Curtis, Brad Matthews, Tom Hayden, I mean, those guys put a tremendous amount of time, effort into the overall endeavor. And honestly, we wouldn't be in a position that we're in right now in terms of our preparation for next week without the work of, again, it's not just them. There's a number of other people. Our area scouts are really the boots on the ground, and it starts with them. But they pour a lot into it. They give a significant amount of time, effort, and energy. And by the time we get to Thursday, we have as much information as we need. And the goal is just try to make good decisions for the organization. And I think the goal for next week is try to add the right people with the right mindset. I would say, like Will said it best the other day in terms of our program, what it's about. We're not for everybody. Everybody's not for us, and that's okay. We're just looking for the right people with the right mindset, that are right fit, that, we think can help us win football games. So not to oversimplify it, but that's the goal. So, again, making progress, got a long way to go. I'm sure we'll get some questions here about the offseason and some of the things that we've done. I mean, frankly, it's kind of laughable. I mean, it's so early. I mean, we haven't done anything. So what happened last year has no bearing on this year. So we're focused on right now. We're focused on the present. We're focused on improvement. And I think the players' focus is just on their attitude, their effort, and their commitment to being a good player. So outside of that, I mean, the rest of it is just a bunch of garbage. So we'll focus on just trying to improve and become a better team and see if we can make some progress here in the offseason and get ourselves ready to go for training camp. Hopefully we've improved the team. We're really not going to know if we have or not until training camp. I would say, and honestly, I think the division, when you look at what the other teams around us have done a great job. So, hopefully we can keep pace with what's going on in division as well. So, it's interesting going back to the league meetings. We were there in March, and they provide a lot of information on a lot of, not just rules. There's some other information that is made available, but I want to say it was 70% of the games last year were within one score in the fourth quarter. And then 42% of the games were decided by 6 points or less. Really what it shows is how competitive this league is. So the margins are very small. So we have to do whatever we think we can do to put ourselves in a position to at least have an opportunity. And even going back and looking at our team last year, I mean, what is it, 9 or 10 games were one-score games, whatever it was. So the margins are very small. There's a lot of great players. There's a lot of great coaches in this league. So, we're just trying to put ourselves in a position where we have an opportunity to compete. In the end, it's going to come down to how well we execute on Sundays. So, and ultimately, it's going to come down to the work and the effort that we put in. So, again, it's kind of where we are. So take some questions. Sarge, we'll start with you, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, so there's a lot there. Did you guys catch all that? I don't want to comment on everything that he said because I've got about 20 bullet points right here. The extra time for the players for the Hall of Fame game, that's really good, I think, for some of the talent evaluation. I wonder nowadays where they're so limited in what they can do, it probably starts to get pretty stale after 2 or 3 weeks anyway, and then you get that extra week. I think for whatever guys that you want to get an extra look at, it makes sense. As a veteran player, it just sucks because it makes it that much longer. He mentioned that most of the team was back in the building. I'm sure you guys have already heard either the Stefon Diggs question or not. If Stefon Diggs isn't there yet, because I haven't watched this yet, I'm not overly concerned about that in any regard, even if I'm somebody that really wants Stefon Diggs to be there for the offseason program, just because the trade was so recent. And guys usually get a bit of a grace period that, like, yeah, look, this is a lot right away. It's not like baseball mid-season where the guy's got to be on a plane in 2 hours. I'm not overly concerned about that, and we'll find out more. I do, as Twistifer Robbins said, that it seemed like Nick might have had a little bit of an edge to him in this one. He said certain things are laughable about some of the attention that they've gotten for the offseason. He said that some guys who were reported as being in the building weren't actually in the building on some of these visits, apparently. So at least some misreporting there. And then what was the other thing? He kind of turned his nose up at something else. But it's, yeah, like the problem with when you're in the position Nick is in, you've been through enough off seasons where you get a D on your free agency grade and it ends up actually being a really good free agency down the road. And likewise, you see a whole lot of people that get graded really well on their off season and then they end up stinking. And Nick is more aware of that than anybody. So the knee jerk reaction of most old school NFL guys is to take any praise at all from the media at large, who don't have all the information that we'd love to have. Don't take the compliments too seriously when it's coming from the media. First question was from Sarge here, and if anything is held over from the previous news conference, we should be able to hear the questions. Big progress. New team.
Just wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the things that you all have done in the offseason? I know you said it's, you have to wait to play the games, you have to wait to training camp or whatever. But, I mean, from the outside looking in, it's almost like you're winning even before the draft with the additions of the free agents that you have.
He doesn't want to hear that.
Just say, generally speaking, our philosophy, even going back to last year, is just try to put together, a good team, try to put ourselves into a position where we feel we can be competitive. And I say, by the same token, when you go into the draft as best you can, you want to put the team in a position where if you had to go out there and play a game today, like we'd be able to put a team on a field. So when we feel as we sit here today, if we had to go out there and play a game, we'd be able to put a team out there and not necessarily have to rely on the draft to, let's say, add a player. Like I think whoever we draft, I mean, hopefully they'll come in here and create a role and a niche for themselves. It's probably gonna be hard to make this team or make a significant impact. And I mean, hopefully that's a good thing. But by the same token, there's a lot of things that are going to happen between now and September. The overall composition of the team, who's available, injuries are a part of it. So that's all we can do is just focus on where we are right now. Hopefully we've added players that can help our team in some capacity. And then hopefully we continue to add to the team as we go here next week. Right now, like I said, we have 9 picks, call it 9 draft picks. I think right now we're at 73, 74 players. So there's another, call it 15 to 20 spots, give or take. So the big thing is just trying to add the right people with the right mindset, with the right mentality, that just want to come in and work hard and just kind of do their job. And again, try to create as competitive environment, as competitive a situation as possible, which D'Amico has talked about that. And I think philosophically, we believe in the same thing. So, I mean, everybody is going to have to earn whatever the role and opportunity is, but hopefully the players that we brought them here for a reason because we think they can help us. But by the same token, there's a lot of things that can change, a lot of things that can happen between now and, the start of the season, whenever that is. So, but, hopefully we're in a decent position, but we're certainly not guaranteed anything at this point.
This is the other thing too, when we talk about just understanding how long it takes to actually evaluate a free agency class and all of those kinds of things. I think likewise, the thing that Nick does really well that doesn't go over well with the public but that's really, really important, I think, in modern sports in general, is you got to have a certain humility about your draft picks, about the free agents you sign, and understand that you're not going to bat 1,000. Like some of the free agents you sign, you might feel awesome about, and it's just not going to work out for whatever reason. Sometimes they're just not a good fit. Sometimes guys decline or they get injured. But like that's where the world in which Nick operates is that you've got like probability clouds, and you're just hoping that, yeah, there's a good chance this guy works out, or we feel good about the chances this guy's going to work out. But if you fall in love with any of them too much, what you end up with is, and this is what I saw, like one of the things I didn't like about Rick Smith, and Rick Smith did a lot of really good things. One of the ways that Rick Smith operated was he was very reluctant to cut draft picks. And that's when you sometimes worry that either a guy is too convinced of his own methods or has too much of his ego wrapped up in it. And I'm not picking on Rick Smith. Every GM has flaws, but it gets dangerous that way because then you end up, there's an opportunity cost there. You hang on to a player that you're convinced is good, even though it's really obvious that he's not. And in the meantime, you're missing on you're missing opportunities to look at other players too. So I like that from Nick's regard. I don't think he gets too emotionally tied up in any of these guys.
Some of the chatter about the team that you got to build is laughable and garbage. Why do you feel that the moves that you made, the positive, feedback you guys got, why do you feel like it's garbage and kind of laughable?
Okay, yeah, so I think that was DJ asking about if you're saying that some of the commentary or compliments are laughable and or garbage, then how do you feel about these moves or why do you feel that way? I'll rewind it just a little bit. I don't want to mischaracterize the question.
Token, there's a lot of things that can change. Just focus on where we are right now. Hopefully we've added players that can help our team try to create as competitive environment, as competitive as things. So there's that. There's
that some of the chatter about the team that you got to build is laughable and garbage. Why do you feel that the moves that you made, the positive, feedback you guys got, why do you feel like it's garbage and kind of laughable?
Okay, so why do you feel like that feedback is garbage or laughable?
Yeah, I think anything that's said outside the building is just noise. So it doesn't really affect our focus, our preparation. So like we're just focused on our team, we're just focused on improvement, and we're focused on the work. So what people, it's kind of like the draft, or we go through the weekend, we're going to have on Monday, right, or Sunday afternoon draft grades, right? I mean, it's the most ridiculous concept that I've ever heard of. Like the players haven't even been in the building yet, and we're making an assessment about their performance. It's the same thing in the off season. I mean, nothing is won in the off season. It's all on paper. It's all chatter. Honestly, it's, fun for you guys, I'm sure, to talk about. But our focus is in the building on the things that we can control, which is the work and just continual improvement. So that's not going to change regardless of who's here, regardless of what's said outside of the building. The focus is on the present. The focus is on right now. And we're just trying to do as good a job as we can on a day-to-day basis, because it's about stacking days and weeks together, not about, one move is going to make the difference between what happens between now and the start of the season. So we've never approached it that way. We've never looked at it. I'd say as long as D'Amico and I are in a position to run the football team, that's going to be our philosophy, and that's not going to change. So, again, the players have to come in here and they have to work. So it starts with the players. It starts with their attitude. It starts with their performance, because in the end, it's about how the players perform. And in the end, it comes down to how well you execute on Sunday. So we can talk about all we want about what's going on, what the expectation is. Quite frankly, it doesn't really matter. What matters is what goes on behind the scenes. And then we go out there and hopefully we can execute and put ourselves in a position each week to put a good product out there.
Yeah, I think if you put yourself in the mindset of, especially an old school NFL dude, which Nick Caserio is by now, that the thing they're all terrified of is complacency in any regard. And like if you win the Super Bowl, you're terrified that your players are going to start just feeling a little too comfortable and forget how hard it was to actually win the Super Bowl. So especially when it comes to off-season praise, when people are getting complimented on doing nothing at all really of substance yet, it makes them super nervous. So I think that like any edginess that you guys have picked up on, I think that it's a little bit of that, but then it's also probably, if I'm Nick Caserio, you're aware of the stuff that people were saying this time last year and how nonsensical it all ended up being, the reports that the Texans weren't going to take a quarterback, all of this other stuff. You probably get a little sick of just, having a year ago, he was answering questions about why they were so stupid before they had not even done the actual stupid thing that people claimed they were stupid for doing, even though they would never end up doing it. It's very frustrating.
It's a huge role. But in what ways do you feel like this free agency, you all were able to kind of secure some of the bigger names that you all have had in the past?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't really know what that means. I think, when you put the team together, you look at the opportunities that are presented in front of you. You have X number of dollars that you have available to you, and it's all about resource allocation. So, I mean, what you could Devin Singletary, was that not like a big enough name last year, I guess? So again, we're looking for good football players with the right mindset that come in here, espouse our philosophy, and then ultimately have to go out there and perform and play football.
Dude, all right, he's chippy. We got like 30 more minutes of this. Well, was Devin Singletary not good enough for you? Like, not quite.
Said that a lot of players at the Pro Bowl were like, hey, tell D'Amico, tell the Texans to come get us. To me, that indicates that a lot of people were interested. So I was just wondering if you saw a lot more interest from free agents, or in what ways did you see?
Yeah, it's all about opportunity. Like, ultimately, players are going to look at the situation and say, where do I have the best opportunity to perform? What's the situation? And really, it starts with the people that are in that locker room down the hall, the players that are here, a lot of the returning players. And then, honestly, it starts with the head coach. So, I mean, arguably, look, I'm biased, but like he's one of the best coaches in the league. So I think people want to be around like-minded people with the right mindset that prioritize winning. And I think what we've tried to do is create an environment where people come here and be themselves. We're not trying to force feed anybody into being something who they're not. Come in here, just be yourself. Ultimately, the most important thing that the player has to do, and it's D'Amico's message to the team anytime we get together, we don't have a lot of rules, but ultimately protect the team is the most important thing. So protect the team And then outside of that, I mean, there's some other things that factor into it. But again, players are going to make a decision based on where they feel they have the best opportunity in front of them. So, I mean, it's a credit to the guys that are in that locker room. It's a credit to the guys that are in the bubble training. So part of our job, my job, is kind of be a steward and figure out where the opportunities lie and try to make the right decisions for the organization and get the right people. And finances are a part of it. Like, I'm not, ignorant. Like, yeah, finances are certainly going to be a part of it. And, those are the discussions that we have, with the agents and the representatives. So just because a player is interested in us doesn't necessarily mean we're interested in that player. So does he have the right fit? Do we foresee a role for him? Does he fit the system? Again, like Will said, we're not for everybody. Everybody's not for us. And there's a number of different ways you can view that. It's schematically, it's certain players prioritize other things over others. So that's part of our job and responsibility. And as it pertains to specifically like the draft, like we have control over the people that we bring in the building. Free agency, to a certain extent, you have control, but you also don't have control because sometimes it's driven financially by the resources that you're willing to allocate. So hopefully we've identified the right people that can come in here and impact the program in a positive way. We'll get more information here as we go here during the spring and training camp. I'm sure there's some players that are here right now, like they may or may not be here by the start of the season, and vice versa. There's probably players that aren't here right now that could end up here in November or in October for some reason, like Derek Barnett did, and a number of different players that came in at different points. So try to take it one day at a time. Try to look at the opportunities that are in front of us, make good decisions, make the right decisions for the organization, and then go from there.
What goes into a discussion?
So just real quick, as far as the chippiness goes, he was chippy, man. Let's see. The Caserio I heard on Pendergast didn't hurt my feelings this much. He's not talking about the fans' opinions. I think he honestly, I wonder if part of this, his chippiness today and kind of talking about the media at large and the way they cover the draft, I wonder if there's a little bit rolled into this about the ESPN report from yesterday that talked about Belichick, why he didn't get a job, had all kinds of anonymous reports, but then really, really weirdly and curiously, they tell a story about Bob Kraft calling up Arthur Blank and talking trash about Bill Belichick, but the source is somebody who talked to somebody who is close to Belichick. Like it's sketchy. And I think like when he's like, because I've talked to Nick about this off air before as well. There's so much reported like about New England and everything up there for so long. They got so used to just things being categorically wrong that reported about them at times. And he's probably just sick of it. So, and then this time of year, there's just a lot of bad reporting. So maybe that's wrapped up in it a little bit as well. Let's see.
With another team trading for a player like
From there.
what goes into a discussion with another team trading for a player like Stefon Diggs, and how you guys kind of arrived at that decision?
Yeah, Cody, I'd say I talked to a lot of different teams at different points of the year. So I think we're always open-minded and just trying to look at opportunities that may or may not exist. I would say that was something like I don't think we were really anticipating. But I think I had some conversations at different points, and ultimately it was able to come to fruition. And we felt that it made sense. It made sense for us to pursue. So I'd say we talked to a lot of teams about a lot of different things at different points. Hopefully, Steph can come in here, and Steph's been a productive player. So hopefully he can come in here and help our team in some capacity.
The other thing about that, so they said that Stefon Diggs trade wasn't something that they necessarily knew was a serious possibility. Remember, they restructured Titus Howard's contract. They had gone after Keenan Allen and ended up not being able to get Keenan Allen. They tried to trade for him. And then the Stefon Diggs trade was first broached seriously on Tuesday of that next week, and the trade ended up happening on Wednesday. So like it came together very quickly. And I think when they cleared that space for Titus Howard, it wasn't specifically for the Stefon Diggs trade. I think it just speaks to something that Nick has done a really good job of. They stay very flexible. I don't think I'm sensing somebody had made a comment earlier. I don't think he gets asked about the Malik Collins trade, but that was something they had to pivot off of, but we'll see.
He was a good fit. You talk about noise outside. There is a label, or people say, "Oh, he's a diva." And the fact that we haven't heard from Stefon yet, is that a Stefon thing, or is that a football ops thing?
Yeah, number one, I don't even know what that definition means. So if someone can define that for me, again, like, we're not worried about, again, we're worried about what a player does when he walks in our building. So we do our research. We talk to our players. We talk to other players all the time. We talk to our players, as an example, like a lot of the guys are in the draft. And we talk to those players. Hey, what are your thoughts about so-and-so? What is your experience with him? So when we do our research, and then ultimately D'Amico and I sit and talk, and if we feel comfortable with the decision, then we go ahead and make the decision. Candidly, I think it's unfair to label anybody until they actually have an opportunity to walk in the building. Again, our environment's different than another environment. So we really don't know what's going on in 31 other buildings. We know what's going on in our building. So excited to have stuff here. And, when he gets here, I mean, certainly he's, he'll be available, maybe ample time for you all to visit with him. So, I mean, again, there's not too many people that have been available. We just started the offseason program. So, like, we're not, sign a free agent, bring a jersey up here and, like, do a big powwow. Like, that's not how we operate. Like, we don't believe in that. So that's just us philosophically. So other teams choose to do it differently. So we try to do what we think is right. And we're pretty consistent on that. I know Will and CJ were available the other day. So there'll be other players that are available at different points during the spring. So excited to have stuff here, and hopefully can add to our team.
This is getting to be, man. This is he's letting his Belichick out, man. I think if they win a Super Bowl, Nick is going to get up there and he's going to get up there literally with a baseball bat. He's going to be like he's going to be like in that movie, with the principal where they said, "Call me Batman." That one. Diva, since he didn't know what the diva was. Let's see. Bleacher Report, an article. Everyone who watches football knows what a diva is, and mostly equates them with outspoken wide receivers and flashy, self-absorbed prima donnas. But there's more to being a diva than just being a diva than just being loud and obnoxious. True divas have to love the spotlight, both on and off the field. That's interesting. Does Stefon Diggs actually meet the true definition of diva, according to Bleacher Report or any other weird website I might go to? I think he's only halfway diva. He does have some pretty cool game day outfits. I don't think that he always commands attention or needs attention the way a true diva would, but I think that he might be agitator. Like, he gets agitated. The thing that I don't worry about with him is there's not really any evidence that he's a cancer, and that it doesn't seem like he brings people down around him. That's the biggest concern. Divas are fine. You can have a diva in the organization. It's the charismatic diva that pulls other people down or convinces rookies that they shouldn't listen to their coach or anything like that. Those are the guys that can be dangerous. And I haven't really heard any stories about that with Stefon Diggs. It tends to be more that he's just disgruntled about either the way he's being used or the offense is running or something like that. So I'm not, I would say he only 25% meets the definition of diva. It doesn't mean that he's not potentially a difficult personality at times. I just don't know if he's I don't know if he's diva, like old school diva.
I'm hesitant to make moves when you feel the deal is right. What's your philosophy on that thinking, moving up or down to get maybe a position you're looking at, a type of player that you want to?
More draft-wise or just generally speaking? Yeah, I think we've always been kind of open-minded, be willing to be flexible and adaptable. And movement is contingent, really. It's really player-driven. So it's supply and demand. What are the resources available? If you bypass a player at a certain level, what's the opportunity you can get an equivalent player at a later point? Do you have to maybe move in order to secure the services of that player, and at what cost? So there's cost-benefit analysis that goes on continually. I think the one thing that we try to do, and hopefully it's a good enough job in some respects, but it's just be open-minded, be flexible, and be willing to adjust and adapt to the circumstances. And a lot of that is based on your preparation and the information that you have. It's understanding the board top to bottom. It's knowing the players not only at the top, but at the bottom as well. There are probably some players that we actually brought in for visits that we wouldn't draft, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be interested in them, right? So we're just trying to gather as much information along the way as possible, and then just try. The draft ends up being really about positioning and just where do you think you have to move. You're not necessarily making it based on what other teams are doing, but again, you might not be looking at the same players other teams are looking at, but maybe there's a certain position. So, there's a little bit of strategy, maybe some positioning involved. So I think just flexible, adaptable, open-minded. I mean, that's kind of been our thought process and our mindset since we've been here, and, we'll probably continue that moving forward.
Yeah, I think the interesting with Nick is compared to Brian Gaine, remember, Brian Gaine never made draft day trades. And that's like wherever your happy medium is on how much your GM should trade. Maybe you're not comfortable with Nick Caserio, but and how frequently he trades, but like you want it to be more than never. So Caserio is very, very active. I think again, like that you might think, okay, that doesn't jive with what Seth was saying earlier about being, humble or having humility about your assessments of players. I think where it does make sense is when you look at him talking about it. Usually he's talking about moving into a band of players, like a group of players. It's rare that he's drafting. It's rare that he's moving specifically to target a single player. It's that, or, he might like that single player, but he's not going to move there unless there's also a couple other guys that are still available that they like. And I think that's where the humility part of it comes into. The other side of it too is that as frequently as he trades, I know that, the draft chart that they supposedly use in New England, as I've read, is a little bit different than the draft chart that a lot of other teams would use. It's still way closer to the old Jimmy Johnson model. And you never get any of these guys to tell you exactly. But the point system, like if you feel like you've got a superior point system to everybody else, then kind of like every time you make a trade, if you're making the points add up on their chart, there's a good chance that just through like basically arbitrage, because you're using a different conversion rate, that you end up coming out ahead points-wise using your system. Now, that's a little bit of potential arrogance or hubris or confidence in your method versus everybody else. But the analytics dudes that studied the Patriots back when Caserio was still there generally had a pretty good, like, even though the Patriots drafts had some really weird decisions at times, as far as the trades and everything went, New England tended to be more analytical than everybody else. I promise I'll stop being so nerdy.
With Stefon, what do you feel like you guys get in him just in terms of versatility, all the things he can do? And many years ago, you were thrown to him at that Maryland Pro Day. And
you weren't there for that, were you?
I was. I watched you. I thought you threw well.
It's funny. It's funny you bring that up. No, actually, I was there for that workout. Actually had the opportunity to meet with them after the workout as well as part of our process. So, I mean, I would say like that information, honestly, is probably more relevant than, what an information might be kind of floated around outside the building. But as it pertains to him, I mean, look, he's an experienced player. He's been productive. He's instinctive. He has good hands. So, our system is maybe a little bit different than the system that he was in Buffalo, but he was as productive as any player in the league. So there might be some things that we're doing maybe that are similar to maybe what he was doing in Minnesota. But, good football player. We think he can help us, which is why he's here.
Yeah, there's a lot in Minnesota that had a Gary Kubiak effect still. So like there's the offshoot, the various Kubiak Shanahan offenses and how they're implemented. You can go back and see exactly how Stefon Diggs was with this or with that. I think the biggest thing is that for receivers, look, the route tree is the route tree. There's going to be things that are tweaked based on your quarterback and your specific team and everything. And then after that, it's just a lot of terminology. So I don't worry about that. I think the other part of it with Bobby Slowick is that the timing and everything else is really, really important. And Stefon Diggs is just like plenty precise enough with all of that. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I haven't seen anybody yet say that for some reason it's a bad fit strictly from a football standpoint. The people who have been critical of it tend to be based more on the diva part of it. Whatever that means, we don't have a strict definition.
Can be a crapshoot. So when you grab CJ Stroud, obviously you have high hopes for him, but you don't know until he plays. You've also said that you look at roster building somewhat in like 2-year windows. So how did his play and knowing that you found a quarterback impact maybe moves that you did this offseason and your plans moving forward?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Look, the draft, it's not an exact science. So I think when you add a player to your team, You add the player because you think at some point he's going to be able to impact you in a positive way. Sometimes that's the way it goes for a myriad of reasons. Sometimes it doesn't work itself out. But I would say we're not making decisions based off of one individual's performance. We're making decisions based off of what we feel is in the best interest of the organization. And I think, and I know there's been some discussion about that comment about, window and some of the other things. I think really the right way to look at it is kind of resource allocation, just from a financial standpoint. So I'd say from a salary cap standpoint, you kind of have X number of dollars that you're going to use maybe in 1 year. Whatever you don't use that year, you're going to roll into the next year, right? And then once we get to 25, then we'll look at 26. So it's just about distribution of resources, but ultimately you're not making decisions based on one individual thing. There's a lot of different ways to put the team together. So we just have to put the team together, in a way that we feel makes the most sense for us. So I think what you're looking for with younger players is improvement from 1 year to the next. So I think that's the biggest challenge for younger players, especially players, in their first year going in their second year. It's about improvement, and can you make some adjustments relative to your performance last year? So, what happened last year is great, but quite frankly, it doesn't have any bearing on what goes on this year. You're only going to be judged on how well you perform this year. So, again, the team building process, it's probably, one of the most enjoyable aspects of my job, because it's never one size fits all. So you sort of have to be open-minded and kind of bob and weave a little bit, and willing to make decisions in real time, and also be willing to kind of make adjustments in real time as well. So it goes back to preparation, it goes back to information, it goes back to understanding players, it goes back to understanding the league as best you can, and just trying to figure out kind of how it's all going to fit together.
So, all right, I feel like he was trying like hell there to not talk about the rookie QB contract window, which at the same time, I think everything he said backs up that. Look, let's think about the alternative. Let's say that they had drafted young Davis Mills last year, and Davis Mills went in and just played kind of like Davis Mills did. Like, are you going to be as aggressive this offseason? It's hard for me to believe that they would be. I think that feeling like you've got your guy in CJ Stroud makes all those things that he just talked about, which is that the cap space you don't use, you can roll on into the next year. I think if they weren't happy with the quarterback play right now, or if they felt like there was a potential they had made a mistake at quarterback, there really would be no reason to go out and spend money or draft picks on Stefon Diggs. There wouldn't be the reason to give Danielle Hunter that much guaranteed money. And I think they might have been aggressive, but just not balls to the wall aggressive like they were. That's just me. That's me, who outside looking in, despised media, as Nick has made reference to multiple times. If you're just joining us now, Nick has been on one a little bit. Like he's not happy about, in general, just pre-draft coverage, post-draft coverage, a lot of the stupid things like post-draft grades and everything that go into it. And he's not bashful about saying it. It's been fun.
How does the draft staff work with the coach and the assistants and the position coaches?
Yeah, great question. It's very collaborative. We have a lot of discussions. So from call it August to December, there's no heavy lifting for the coaches. Obviously, you have things that are more important. So kind of set the table. And then when you kind of transition into the off season, really post All-Star game, and combine is really the first opportunity where coaches really have an opportunity to dive in. So you try to give them a starting point. You try not to give them everybody. So we've kind of pared it down, and we've kind of put the players in a position from a grade standpoint where we think they're going to fall. It doesn't mean that that's final. It just means based on the information that we have, here's kind of how we see the player and project the player. So our coaches all receive kind of a list of players for them to evaluate, both on the film, and if they have an opportunity to visit with them at the combine in the informal interview process. And then the coordinators were a part of the formal interview process of the combine. So then we can come back from the combine and they go through their evaluation. And then once they kind of get through their evaluations, we meet as a staff, coaching staff, kind of scouting staff, to get their feedback and input about how they see the player. Does that match up with maybe what we see in the scouting side? Is there a gap? If there is a gap, okay, maybe we go back and do a little bit deeper dive and figure out where that discrepancy lies. And then again, we're not trying to get to a point where we're just agree on everything, but we're trying to get to a point where we see players similarly. We envision the role similarly. We're never going to force a player on a coach because it's unfair to really anybody involved. So we're not going to make decisions in a vacuum. We're going to take all the information in. We're going to aggregate as much information as possible. And ultimately, D'Amico and I will sit down and go through it and then figure out like what decision makes the most sense. So maybe it's okay if we have a group of 4 players, we're comfortable with one of the 4 players. Okay, so then ultimately we're going to have to make a decision there. But there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of discussion back and forth. It's ongoing. We've actually had a couple follow-up meetings once we kind of got through the first wave. Hey, take a look at this group, 6 or 8 players. Hey, can you do a informal Zoom call with them? We're just trying to get more information. Then we'll come back. Hey, how'd it go? Well, we had a question about this. What did you think? So we're aggregating a lot of information, and there's a lot of dialogue. I mean, D'Amico's probably sick of me walking in his office every day, but literally we talk about players, we talk about the team on a day-to-day basis. So it's all about communication. So you can't over communicate in situations like this. You're making big decisions on behalf of the organization. So I guess I'm just trying to kind of steer it in the right direction and be a steward and, you know, be supportive of everybody and be receptive to, you know, everybody's opinion. At some point, we got to draw the line somewhere. But hopefully we're identifying the right people for the organization. We see the vision, we see the role, but their information and input is certainly valued without question.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting too is the coaches are late to the process. So like as a GM, I think one of the things that they have to do also is be sure that, you know, the coaches aren't too heavily influencing appraisals of players until they've actually been in it for a while. Because, you know, the coaches get done with the season, take a little break or something, and then all of a sudden it's off to the combine where they're being introduced for the first time to these players that the scouts have been looking at for 2+ years. You know, some of them they've been seeing and noticing when they were freshmen, and now 4 years later they're getting drafted. So like I think probably one of the harder parts for a GM is kind of just focusing in and allowing guys to comment or take the comments that have a grounding versus some of the things that are gut reactions by coaches and knowing how to cull them. And like he said, ask all these questions. The other part of it too is I've been on teams where coaches got stuck with players that the GM loved, but the position coach hated. And you're stuck with this situation where it's almost like a grudge match between the coach and the coach and the GM, and the poor kid who may or may not be a good football player, who might have a chance to develop or not, but he's despised by the position coach. Like that's not ideal. Those are non-ideal situations. And I think Nick's probably seen that himself, and you want to always be cognizant of that.
After you guys traded for Stefon Diggs, you guys like voided the last 2-3 years of this contract. I was just wondering, what went into that decision is there like any type of concern knowing that this could be a 1-year rental?
Yeah, every situation is different. I think we evaluate it case by case. You have discussions with the representation and the player, and ultimately you make a decision that you feel was in the best interest of the team and the organization, everybody involved, and that's why we ended up where we are.
Two-part question here. You traded for Joe Mixon as well this offseason. What went into the decision to give up that round pick? And then also, why was it important to extend him as soon as he touched down going into the final year of his contract?
Yeah, the Joe situation is kind of interesting. I think I mentioned this when I was on, with Sean and Seth, a month or so back. So anytime a player, gets released, he's available. So say this situation was similar to kind of what we went through with Jason McCourty, however many years back, when I was in New England. Jason was released. He was going to be on the waiver wire. We kind of intercepted that release. Bill and I talked about this situation. Hey, this is a player we're interested in. All right, if we're willing to give up the compensation that was associated with it, then we were able to gain Jason's services, and Jason ended up being a huge contributor on the Super Bowl winning team. So different, but similar in some respects with Joe. Joe was set to be released. It was a player that, we evaluated and we thought could help our team in some capacity. So, to the earlier question, you get on a phone, talk to the team. Hey, we'd be interested. Would you guys be willing, to give up a pick? Or if we gave up a pick, would you be interested? And that's kind of how the trade was consummated. So, just relative to the commitment that we made to Joe. I mean, Joe's been a productive player. He's been a pretty consistent player. We think he can help our team, and we're glad he's here, hopefully for a few more years. So, I mean, I'd say how that all kind of sort of came together.
I don't honestly remember exactly which conversation Nick would be talking about. I'll have to go back. Sean will tell me after I'm done with this. But I do remember talking. I told Nick my theory about running backs on their third contract, and my theory is this. I refuse to do any research to find out how accurate it is or not. But my theory is that I feel like in a lot of regards, a running back who has already had a second contract and made it through his second contract healthy is a better risk as long as he's still like if he's not, as long as he's not 34 years old. I think that guy's on average a much better risk than a stud running back who hasn't yet gotten his second contract. Because these second contracts are just so often, it's like immediately overpays because a guy's injured or what have you. That I think like I need to qualify my running backs as old school dudes that are actually genuinely tough and are going to be able to A, play through injury, and then B, I guess maybe first and foremost, this should be A, is just don't get injured that much. So Joe Mixon falls into that category. If it works out with Joe Mixon, I'm going to completely take credit for the my personal third running back contract theory working out. If it doesn't, then obviously the Texans screwed up the calculations.
I talked with him and Cal McNair. They kind of admitted that when you first got here, there was a lot of work to do. I don't know, I'll paraphrase it, a lot more to bite off than you maybe kind of knew from the outside. Just wondering how your role or mission statement has changed over the years from when you first stepped in this building to like this year's team.
Let me before he goes in, I don't know if he's going to accept that assessment of what Nick had said. And I don't remember exactly how Nick said it, but it is true that there was way more going on than Nick realized. Nick taking the job, at least it looked like Nick taking the job itself was the thing that really sparked Deshaun Watson to request a trade. Because at that point, Deshaun had made cryptic references that maybe could have meant Jack Easterby or what have you. And then Jack Easterby's pal, Nick Caserio, gets the job. So there was that. So that all of a sudden Nick takes the job and immediately there's a trade request by the quarterback. And then I don't know, like Nick would have been aware of the salary cap situation and everything and the contracts that were out there that were garbage. He did not know about the whole Jack Easterby dynamic. And Jack Easterby had a different role with the Texans than he did with the Patriots. So there was really no way for Nick to know exactly that. And I don't know if that's what he ever was referencing or talking about or anything. There was a whole lot going on that Nick wasn't aware of when he did take the job.
I haven't really thought about that. I think anytime you kind of take on a new.
Okay.
I haven't really thought about
Let's
that.
look at
I
this
think
again.
anytime
To like this year's team.
Oh shit! There we go.
I haven't really thought about that.
Let's
I
go
think
look at this
anytime
smile.
you kind of take
That right there. It looks like he thought about it a little bit, didn't it? It looked like he's thinking back. He's thinking back to like how ridiculous it all was. Maybe this is the first time he's really thought about it. He didn't have any draft picks. He knew that.
I haven't really thought about that. I think anytime you kind of take on a new job or challenge, it's going to be difficult. I mean, nothing's ever easy. So I think you're just trying to be opportunistic and try to take advantage of the situation and really just keep the focus short term and kind of take it one day at a time. I think philosophically, I've always believed in just trying to make good, sound decisions on behalf of the organization. Our job is to put the organization in the best position as possible, try to put together as good a team as possible. I'd say you're relying on a lot of people around you. Running a football team it's a team endeavor. It's not about one person. I've always kind of viewed my job as kind of a steward and just a supportive role and just try to navigate through the waters, however choppy they are. So the league is hard. You have to embrace that. But that's also one of the enjoyable aspects of the job. Nothing's easy. Nothing that you earn in life is ever easy. So, I think you have to be willing to embrace challenges and kind of see the silver lining and not worry about the things that you can't control or out of your control. But try to take as positive approach as possible, be pragmatic, be realistic about the opportunity, the situation, and then just try to make good decisions. And if you're doing it with the right people, and really what you're, and I've said this from the beginning, you're just trying to put a team and organization in a position where you have some degree of consistency and stability, and you have a chance on a year-to-year basis to do something, pretty cool. Doesn't necessarily mean it's automatically going to translate to X number of wins and losses. I mean, the best teams are going to lose 5 or 6 games. So you're going to face challenges every year. So the challenges this year may be a little bit different than challenges when we first took over, but that's okay. That's a fun part of the job. So, I would just say I'm just grateful and thankful for the opportunity that I've been provided here over the last, 3 years going into year 4. I'm going to try to do the best job I can for the organization, try to help the organization as much as possible, as long as they'll have me, and just try to make as positive impact on the organization and the team and the community as much as possible. So understanding that we're relying on a lot of people around us. I'm relying on a lot of people around me. You have a lot of trust. This business is about relationships. It's about people. So if we do it with the right people, with the right mindset, then hopefully we put our team in a position where we can be competitive on a year-to-year basis. And ultimately that's the goal.
Okay, so basically, the only thing I took from that was that he didn't seem as chippy in response to that question as he was to almost every question earlier in the interview. So I don't know whether his blood sugar stabilized or whatever was irritating him when he first started the press conference. He seems to have settled in, because that would have been an easy one for him to get a little bit of chippy about. I would say, if I were to answer the question, if I were to try to do it shortly, like succinctly, I might just say, look, that's the life of a GM. There's always going to be a lot of stuff you didn't realize or know. It might be extreme when you first take over a job, but that's what the challenge is adapting to new circumstances and finding out ways to figure it out. I've said this many times, and I still 100% believe it. I think Nick Caserio will probably never get as much credit as he should for the haul he got back for Deshaun Watson. And that's even as Deshaun Watson has not been playing well yet. I don't think people appreciate how much discipline it took to just sit and wait and turn down offers before that weren't as lucrative. Well, all along, there was always the chance that somehow, that everything might fall apart and you get nothing for him at all. That was ballsy.
Yeah, somebody that maybe had an opportunity to ask a question, and then we can always go back to somebody else. So.
There's the chippiness a little bit there.
We'll close with Cody, Jonathan, DJ, so does anybody else have? Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
When you put together a draft evaluation of a prospect, how much goes into how can the guy help day one versus how can the guy help maybe in November, December versus how can he help in the years to come with that player?
It's a good question. It's kind of a moving target. Sometimes it's circumstantial. Sometimes it's contingent upon maybe some other players that are in the building already. But everybody kind of gets the same opportunity, and you don't want to pigeonhole a player and say, well, he's not going to be ready until November. Maybe he expedites that because his performance, and he shows the confidence, and he gets the confidence and faith of his teammates and the coaches around him. So when people walk in the building, everybody kind of has the same opportunity. I would say, just generally speaking, Cody, a lot of these players are behind just relative to their development, where they are physically. I would say for whatever reason this year, it seems like more players are further behind. And again, some of them have been advised to basically, after the combine or their workouts, basically don't do anything physically in lieu of they don't want them to get hurt or anything like that. Well, okay, you lose, call it 4 to 6 months of training, which means when you come in a building in May, you're behind physically. So maybe we think the player is going to be ready physically, but part of our assessment is to see where they are physically, do some testing, get some baseline testing. And we're not going to put the player in a position and kind of force feed it. The player's ready when he's ready. I would say, just going back to last year's group, I mean, other than, I'd say a player like Brandon Hill might be in a situation like you kind of alluded to, where other than Brandon, everybody else made a contribution to the team last year. Brandon really didn't, because he got off to a slow start, was injured in rookie camp and in OTAs, and he really didn't have a training camp. But I'd say the work that Brandon has put into this point, he's put himself in a position where he's going to have an opportunity. So I'm excited about, his chances and what he can provide. So it's case by case. And again, it's all about how do they perform, how much progress do they make, and how much information can they absorb in a short period of time. And we're not going to, again, put a timetable on anything, kind of pigeonhole anybody. When they're ready, they're ready. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes 2 years. But after kind of that first iteration, draft, offseason program, training camp, in-season, off-season, you should have a decent idea of the player's ability and opportunity in front of them, understanding there could be some things that derail that. So you're kind of weighing everything. There are actually probably some players in this year's draft who physically might not be ready to contribute maybe early on in the season. So maybe you're drafting them for next year. Okay, then that's a decision you have to make and say, are we comfortable with that? Do we want to try to gain a player's services, understanding maybe he's not ready? So those are all the discussions that we're going to have. I think it's a pretty astute observation. But again, every case is going to be different, and you kind of have to treat each individual player kind of differently and not really force feed anything.
Okay,
Hopefully that answers.
that was really interesting. That's the first I've heard somebody say that it seems like this year guys aren't physically as ready, which I think puts more of a premium again on perhaps how a guy is wired individually. If agents don't want guys to get injured, it is interesting because I think that there's ways to work out. People don't realize this anymore because of all these damn Instagram workout videos where people have to do 72-inch box jumps and jump onto a moving train while doing a handstand to get your functional training in. It's possible to get in really, really good shape without also getting injured and damaging your joints. Not everything has to be a gung-ho plyometric workout. So regardless of all that, it's one of the things that's hardest to figure for the GMs and coaches. They're working with college athletes who have been strictly regimented by coaches from the time they're in high school on into college. The workouts are all planned out, everything. And then all of a sudden, the first real test of the independence and like the self-starter ability of players is this first off season before they've even showed up to be professional athletes, because they start this offseason program now where some of them are deconditioned. They're out of shape. They haven't been working out the way they should. They skipped their pro day, all that other stuff, and they're behind. And so they're trying to learn stuff, learn technique and everything, while meanwhile their bodies aren't responding to the workouts the same way. And then they get another 4 to 5 or 6 weeks off between the OTAs and training camp. And again, if they're not disciplined enough to be working out on their own or working with a trainer, they show up in training camp and all of a sudden they're pulling a hamstring, or they're just not sharp in practice because they're not in shape. And a lot of that, right? That's why the character stuff matters so much, because it's just that you've got to have guys that just love working out on their own. It can't, not even that they're motivated or anything. Give me guys that are not going to get out of shape, and you're ahead of the boat, because some of these guys just can't handle being on their own until they learn the maturity after year 1, 2, or 3, if ever. Now I'm turning into a crusty old grumpy vet here.
Jonathan DJ Cole.
Yeah, when you have your top 30 visits, what are some things that you have prospects do? What are some things you're looking for during that process? And how crucial is that to whether maybe you select a player?
No, it's interesting. I think the top 30 notion is kind of a little bit of a misnomer. So it's really not the top 30 players. It's really 30 players that you have an opportunity to bring in your building to gain more information on. So we have various checkpoints on players. So the visit may be another checkpoint. Maybe we're trying to find out something specifically. So again, we probably run the gamut of players, where they potentially could get drafted, what their role is. Maybe we're just trying to verify a separate piece of information. And then maybe when they walk out of the building, we say, okay, well, case closed. Honestly, we're moving on from the player. That's okay too. So it's just whatever we need to do to get to a point where our questions are answered. We can make the right decision. We have the right information. But I think that whole top 30 notion kind of gets used loosely. We don't view it as top 30. We just view it as 30 opportunities. It's actually more than 30, because there's some players that kind of qualify as kind of local visits who play in the 90-minute radius in certain colleges. So we probably get more than 30. And we're not breaking any rules, so the NFL is not going to come after us. But so you're just trying to gain as much information as you can so you can make a good decision. And if there's a loophole that you need to close, this provides you an opportunity to do so.
You know what? That's a really simple way to explain it, that I feel stupid for not just making it that simple. I think because a lot of times, I might get questions about people where they're almost pointing to the top 30 visit like that's proof positive that they love Michael Hall or something like that. And it's just, And it never occurred to me, yeah, it's a bad term. It's not the top 30. Like, it's not like the team power ranks their top 30 and they bring those guys in. So it's just everything he just said. It's their opportunity to talk to somebody that they want to talk to. And CBS Sports has a good tracker where they show like every team that every reported meeting that a team has had with a player. So they'll put the Senior Bowl, they'll put the Combine, they put the pro day, they put top 30 visit, and you start to see as all these lists get combined, you can see a lot of it is like, oh, okay, they're just checking off boxes, being sure that they get a chance to have a good conversation with this guy. Or, I mean, sometimes a guy is a top 30 visit, top 30, specifically because the team doesn't like him. And Nick hinted at that earlier. Like, man, I don't like the cut of this guy's jib, but I don't want to be, I don't want to throw out something good when I might be mistaken. So let's go in and have another talk with him. And 20 minutes into the meeting, he starts this prospect starts, asking questions. You find out he's a Holocaust denier or something. You're like, all right, well, this is this is deeper than we thought.
You mentioned earlier about protecting the team. Nico also mentioned about protecting the team last year in the draft. You guys did a really good job of keeping all the information tight and in-house in terms of wanting to get CJ and trade them for Will.
Is there another way that we're supposed to do it?
No, I'm asking how much do you think that helped, and how are you guys able to keep everything in-house?
Let me just listen to that again.
Yeah.
Keep
Supposed to do it?
tight last year. You mentioned earlier about protecting the team. Nico also mentioned about protecting the team last year in the draft. You guys did a really good job of keeping all the information tight and in-house in terms of wanting to get CJ and trade them for Will.
Is there another way that we're supposed to do it?
No, I'm asking how much do you think that helped, and how are you guys able to keep everything in-house? Because those were two really big moves.
Okay, so I think the basic gist of the question was, you've mentioned before that it's important to keep things in-house, not to leak a lot of information. They managed to keep both the CJ and Will trade in-house. I will put a little asterisk there that Daniel Jeremiah's final mock draft right before the draft predicted the trade up for Will Anderson. So I think that like Belichick said yesterday I think he said this on the McAfee show. He said it somewhere on ESPN that most of the real information that's going to get leaked gets leaked like 12 hours before the draft. Everything before that is all agents that might be informed or misinformed. For whatever it's worth, Daniel Jeremiah nailed the most improbable trade that's happened in over a decade. Say whatever that is, that's a sanctioned leak. That's, if you're going to have a sanctioned leak, I call them sanctioned leaks when the GM and or the head coach or both are doing the leaking. If that was a sanctioned leak to Daniel Jeremiah, I like that it was to Daniel Jeremiah. Those are the kind of people I want to do business with. I don't need some sleaze bag, weird haircut freak that doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Daniel Jeremiah, respectable, honorable.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, communication and, people understanding that the most important thing is to protect the organization and the team. Our job isn't to, despite what everybody thinks, our job is to really publicize what we're doing. We just try to do what we think makes the most sense for our team. Not everybody has all the information. The people that need the information have it. And again, we're trying to do what's in the best interest of the Houston Texans first and foremost, and not really worry about, what we're doing and how that affects other teams. So honestly, there's probably some other teams that, do a better job than we do, and we can certainly do, a better job on our end, and we'll hopefully just continue to look for ways to improve some of our processes, some of the things that are doing. So again, we're not trying to be difficult. I know that's what everybody thinks, but we're just trying to do what we think makes the most sense for the organization and kind of protect the organization and the team. Because ultimately that's what our responsibility is.
The funniest story I've ever heard about people leaking information without permission was Sean Payton and Greg Williams, where basically at some point Sean Payton realized that Greg Williams was leaking information. And we know this because Joe Witt had told this story. It's a soap opera when you get really into it. But like Greg Williams is, man, the dude's different. Even before Bountygate and all that other stuff. The dude's just you've seen interviews with him. You see some of the goofy stuff he says. He's just a different type of dude. But Peyton realized that Greg Williams was leaking information to somebody, so he ended up basically feeding Greg Williams some bad information. I'll have to look that up and revisit that, get the details right at some point along the way.
Sorry.
Also, real quick, let's see. Landry loves negativity around the team. Landry's good at drama. Landry's really good at drama. Let's see. Landry partly loves CJ because of his podium skills. I have a feeling he may not like Diggs if he isn't a media genius. It's one of the reasons Landry now hates me is that I stopped I fixed a lot of my anger management issues. And so like Landry didn't have the opportunity or as many chances or the ability to rev me up anymore. And ever since then, he's like just flat out despised me because I won't throw tantrums like I used to, like a damn fool. He wants me to be his little clown. Let's see. Next question.
Yep. Yeah, Nick, when you look back, you've seen some players come into the building, Kenyon Green's back. How do you feel about him through his rehab process? What were conversations like, and what do you expect from him going into year 3?
Yeah, working hard, made progress. He has an opportunity in front of him, so ultimately it's going to come down to the player and how well they perform. But KG's a good kid, so I mean, he'll have a full off season, which he hasn't had. So we'll see how it goes here. Certainly has an opportunity in front of him, but nobody's guaranteed anything. So I mean, ultimately it's going to come down to how you perform. When you're on the field.
I don't know if there's much more to say other than that. It's not there's also, by the way, everybody, whoever's telling me to tap on the screen to go back 10 seconds, this is I'm at a computer, man. I'm not like, what do you think I'm on? You think I'm on my phone in front of me or something? I got to do I use the arrows to go back 10 seconds.
Next week, of course, you're going into the draft, but you also have another big event coming up for the organization. You've got a chance to see the uniforms. What do you think about it?
Have I seen the uniforms yet? I don't think I've sort of seen them. So I would say I'm probably not the person to talk about relative to fashion. You guys have seen how I dress. So, but no, I think it's great for the fans. So, I mean, again, there's a lot of other people that have talked about the uniforms. I'll let them kind of handle it. So, I mean, I'm more worried about how well they play than how well they look on the field. So, but I'm sure you guys can have some fun with that next week. So,
yeah, I think so. I know that you guys.
All right, thanks.
Okay, good. That's perfect because we can talk about the uniforms a little bit. Yeah, Landry and I are not going to fight. He doesn't hate me. He just does. I think Landry just wishes that I would get angry more than I do anymore. I can't do it. Dude, life's too freaking short, man. I would quit this business if I had to do. If I did it the way I used to do it. I just can't do it. I can't get that angry all the time because it was genuine anger. It wasn't like an act or anything. It was just me like being way too serious about almost everything in my life. And I've moved on from those days. I have PTSD from those stock Patriots answers. Best interest of the team, best teammate I can be. As far as, sorry, Nick, I don't mean to, let me get you out of there. The uniform. So Nick's not sure he's seen the uniforms yet. I saw the one leak of the helmet today with the H-Town blue, I guess that is. And the biggest thing I would say is I know some people are upset that if there's not going to be a Columbia, because I haven't seen the uniforms either. Sean Pendergast, previously mentioned by Nick Caserio, he's seen it. So I don't like, those guys were sworn to secrecy, so I don't try to press for details. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. The helmet that we saw today, if that is indeed the helmet, and if you're upset in the future that there's not more H-Town blue used, in everywhere, I mean, you got to remember the big part of that is whether or not Amy Adams Strunk was going to allow whatever level that she might allow. And it doesn't even come down to copyright violation or anything like that. This is the league. It's 32 business partners, and the league's got to approve all the colors. And if one owner has an issue with another owner using the colors that's associated with their team, then that's pretty much all they can do about it. I don't know if that's the exact thing that they would want to go to war on, but I have no clue if whether they I don't have any clue what the actual color rush uniforms are going to look like or anything like that. Let's see. Oh, okay. Because I didn't go to the thing. There was like most of the former players haven't. They had like one little unveiling where some of the media members could go and I couldn't go, so that's why. If they let all the former players see it, then it would. I was invited to that thing. I just didn't go. If they let all the former players see it, it would be leaked by now. We're just we can't even if we're trying to keep a secret, we have a hard time keeping a secret because we just like literally fat fingers trying to text and everything like that. It doesn't work out well. Seth is a picture of mental health. Thank you, whether that's sarcastic or not. So thank you for the compliment or good joke if it was meant sarcastically. Landry's cool. I like our little debates on his live streams. Yeah, Landry will debate you. Yeah, I'm not saying anything bad about Landry at all. I'm just saying I think Landry prefers a different version of Seth Payne. And like ever since I became a different version of Seth Payne, I think Landry has enjoyed me less. I haven't heard Travis Johnson can't hold water. Yeah, he pees his pants, but he's cool with that. Let's see. So I haven't even seen the full leak. Let's see. I think Seth could give us a good defensive stoppage on a 3rd and short. All he needs to do is listen to Asinine Texans takes my callers into the radio show, and he'll be furious. I could get myself angry. Real quick if I needed to. That's where, like, I think one of the ways I overcame some of my physical limitations as a player was just through going psycho at times, and I got pretty good at tapping into that and just going to a different place than maybe a lot of people do. But I also like in your personal life, obviously, I've always had an awesome relationship with my wife. I was never like yelling at her ever or anything. But when it came to interpersonal conflict in general, I would use anger as a tool way too much, and I never realized like how destructive that could be. Certainly not. It's not productive, and it's destructive at times when you win arguments by yelling. It's just the way I learned. It's the way Daddy taught me. Especially when you're a big guy, then you're just a jerk, you know. So I try to use my wits more than before. I don't know. I haven't. You know what? JJ's charity classic softball game is on my mom's 70th birthday, so I'm not. We're gonna be taking my mom out for a nice dinner that day. Leak was a 4-second video. Oh, so that's it. It's just the leak. So we haven't seen the uniform. Yeah, there's a video from it looks like somebody unloading a bunch of Rydell helmets, which is like you're never going to be able to keep something completely secret anymore when everybody's got a mass media device at their fingertips. So I don't think so. Let's see. I would poop myself if a former NFL defensive lineman was yelling at me. That's where I'll give Josh credit, man. Like Josh, honestly, I talked to Josh about when we had our little exchange at the Super Bowl. For those of you who don't know, Josh Ennis and I got into a big shouting match in the Minnesota Super Bowl up at the Mall of Americas when we had Radio Row crammed into basically the size of a postage stamp at the Mall of America in the middle of winter. Yeah, something was going to happen. But just Josh, like when Josh realized that he was going to have to go over because I was yelling at him and about him on air and challenging him to come see me. Like when he realized he had to go over, like Jilly, his girlfriend, wife, was just sitting there, just like mortified, like, oh crap. Because like I don't know, like Jilly doesn't know me that well. Josh knew I was never going to punch him. Like Josh knows that I wouldn't do that no matter how angry I am. And I was just like really, really pissed off and angry. But I think Josh knew that he had to go over and face me, but there was always that chance that I was gonna punch him. But he was willing to. Like I have respect for Josh because he was willing to go there. Like he would have done it for the sake of the ratings and the bit, and just like and being able to talk about it afterwards. Let's see. I know the amount of Texans legends attending the JJ's game is crazy. It's very good. It's older players versus the current players, and it's funny because John Weeks was actually there before some of the former Texans were there, but he's going to be playing with the current Texans. Kareem Jackson is playing with the former Texans players, the old Texans players. So he was just on the team last year. This might be. I wonder if Kareem is. definitely retiring. He's had a long career. I'm going to tell JJ that your mom is more important than no, and it's not just being more important than I'm putting my mom ahead of whichever charity JJ is helping out, which I'm guessing it's his own charity. So I'm putting my mom in front of kids who need sports equipment in junior high, middle school, high school, whatever you call it in your area. So I'm gonna cut up some of these. I thought the things that I thought were most interesting from Nick were just his general surliness and his use of the word laughable and garbage when he talked about some of the coverage of the draft. I thought that him talking about this year, for whatever reason, players looking like physically unprepared, that's kind of a big deal. I'm gonna get some fatty softy in here. Oh, yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Not long ago, you got heated and quit the stream because people gave you crap about Will Anderson comments. Yep, that was last year, like in around September or October. Because I was basically listen, I'm not sitting here trying to claim I'm a perfect human being or anything. You're 100% right. I got frustrated because basically, like I was saying the same things that Will Anderson would eventually say, which was that in September and October, he wasn't a finished product. He still had work to do. And I think there were a lot of people that were like being defended. I realized what happened afterwards. There were people that were so tired of seeing others, like Titans fans, say that Will Anderson was a bust because he only had so many sacks or only had one sack so far, that they started looking at anything that wasn't gushing praise about Will Anderson as like somehow being overly critical of Will Anderson. We're like, no, I was just saying that the exact same damn thing Will said twice, that ESPN pass rush and win rush rate doesn't mean crap when you're actually evaluating defensive linemen. And like, that's exactly that's what I was saying. And then I was like people were calling me a hater for the exact same thing that Will would eventually say. Very disappointing. Very disappointing. Plus, I think I was drunk. That's also, the other time I kind of flipped out a little bit was on that Ravens live stream where I remember I was drinking leftover champagne from the holiday party that I had missed. I was up at the office at like 8 p.m. One last thing from Michael Knight. Anger is a waste of energy. I will say this is my one tip for anger management when I changed my life around in a lot of ways. For me, really what worked, I don't even remember exactly what sparked this or what made me realize it. I kind of did like a profit and loss statement in my mind of like the various times I'd lost my temper, like how many times did it actually help the situation or even help me personally versus the amount of times that it hurts the situation or hurts me personally or like people around me. And it's pretty drastic. Like anger is a very, very important tool when it comes to standing up for yourself against boundaries that have been crossed, either like socially, physically, whatever it might be. Very important to be able to use it when you really need to protect yourself. But those instances in modern society really aren't all that often. Like it's pretty few and far between when anger is the appropriate response and where you wouldn't be way, way, way better off without anger. And I happen to work in a profession where anger is rewarded pretty healthily. So like that's part of it though too. Like I had to figure out different ways. Okay, throwing a tantrum is an easy way to keep people listening or to get them intrigued or for them to cut through the noise, whatever's going on. If you hear somebody flipping out, then okay, they're going to listen. There's other ways to do it, but it's just kind of a cheap and easy way to do it. And then to get radio nerdy on you here for a minute or podcast nerdy, I do think that the tone of sports talk, whether it's on radio, on podcasts, YouTube, whatever it is, I think the tone has changed a lot since the 2016 election. And without I'm not choosing sides in any of that or anything. Like as far as how public discourse has been because of a combination of factors fueled by social media, things got just so damn pervasive and so toxic on the political side of things that I think people more so nowadays are really looking at sports as an escape more so than ever. And it seems like the appetite for the hot sports take just fell off the face of the earth. People would much more rather have conversation, just, general low-key snarkiness, all that stuff. It's pretty good for a live stream, man. Yeah, everybody please like and subscribe. If you're just tuning in, I'm Seth Payne, played for the Texans long ago, the first 5 years of the franchise. Really the most glorious years of the franchise, as anybody will tell you. And played in the NFL for 10 years, and now I'm on Sports Radio 610 in Houston. Nico's a beast, don't get me wrong. Never sent, never signed. Okay, I got to get one, Daniel. Okay, so let's see. The lost art of the unsent angry letter. Okay. Whenever Abraham Lincoln felt the urge to tell someone off, he would compose what he called a hot letter. He'd pile all of his, as opposed to Mary Todd, who was a hot mess. Am I right? He'd pile all of his anger into a note, put it aside until his emotions cooled down. But he didn't do anything. And then write, never sent, never signed. The other really good story about Abraham Lincoln, which I try to remember at times, and I've actually, like this, if you can get to this level, when I've successfully used this, which isn't all that often, but I've really felt like a boss when I've done this. Somebody asked him about how he felt about this officer. I'm going to get the details wrong here, but let's say it was an officer, let's say it was another politician. And Abraham Lincoln said something nice about him, and then the person says, "Well, that person has been saying some really bad stuff about you, and like how can you compliment him like that?" And he said, "Well, you asked me my opinion of him, not his opinion of me. So, like I told you, like what his better assets are. His opinion of me has no relevance to like how he is to everybody else. So, like if you can separate yourself that way, detach yourself." Like in your own personal experience from how that person is, it's a lot easier to go through life. Yes, I don't see the relevance, but yes, he was a Republican. Let's see. Nico is becoming elite towards the end of the 2022 season. One thing about Nico that was hard to judge in the 2022 season was he was being thrown so many inaccurate passes. So there were his catch rate, we talked about this. His catch rate was low, but he wasn't dropping a lot of passes. And it was just like a simple matter of that. Yeah, they were targeting him with bad passes a lot. I'm not blaming Davis Mills for it completely. There was some Pep Hamilton sprinkled in there as well, but it just wasn't the same as running a CJ Stroud offense. Detaching from reality is the best. Frobius, I don't know what happened to you forever. And I'm not on X.com hardly much anymore. So maybe I just don't run into you there as much. But I know that you, like Frobius has an interesting life. He kind of separated himself from the rat race and went otherwise. Like Frobius, someday Frobius, you and I will have a beer together. Or whichever chemical you use to detach from reality. Let's see. Okay, I don't know, but Nico is a broken tackle machine. This is 100% true. And I didn't realize this until I saw that TJ Who's Your Daddy podcast with Nico Collins. So TJ Hushmanzada pointed out that Nico, amongst receivers, had the most broken tackles after a catch. So, like, obviously running backs usually have the most broken tackles, but he had the most broken tackles on the run after the catch in the league, and it was by a pretty healthy margin, too. He had a lot. Like, it was towards the end of the year we started getting to, like, bulldozer mode where he's just stiff-arming people and seeking out people on the sideline. Like, I feel like we're going to see a little bit more of that. Let's see. I'm not blaming Davis Mills on the inaccurate passes, but he was the one throwing them. I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm just saying. In words of the O.J. Simpson, who was described as, like, in all of these headlines, it said O.J. Simpson, once acquitted of murder, passed away. And I don't know, like, why did you have to add? If you're going to add anything at all, I feel like you got to do at least a blurb in there, maybe also about the civil case or what have you. Not to mention the souvenirs afterwards. Why put that blurb in there? Why put the acquitted of murder part in there? I don't know, but it was universal. I guess, you know what? If it bleeds, it leads. If you can get the measure, if you got to mention the murder trial somehow in there. And that's the damn truth. I'm going to put that on the description for this. After I cut this up and we do an actual podcast or some shorter episodes, I'll incorporate murder in there, and I'll A/B test it to see which one. The thumbnail that says murder on it is going to slay. Excuse the pun. I'm giving Nico credit, unless that's a response to somebody else. Yeah. That was from long before. I'm just going to hang out with you guys for a while because I don't want to get back to doing my actual work. But there's no Astros. There's no Astros today, right? I finally have an off day. Yeah. Okay. The afternoon game screwed me up yesterday. Oh yeah, I should do an AMA. I'm gonna be honest with you, Daniel. Sometimes I worry that I have a hard time with AMAs because there's almost no question that somebody can ask me where I didn't wish that I had done more research on it. No, I say that there's a lot of questions you can ask me, but I'll do some AMAs at some point. But around draft, I'll tell you honestly, around draft time, that's when I feel overwhelmed around draft time because there's just so many prospects, and the guys that do it really, really well, like the Lance Zerlines of the world and everything. Like Lance can sit there and answer questions about 300 different freaking prospects that he's in. For each one, he's written up a report. I feel like I like doing the defensive lineman because that's something I've got an area of expertise in that, and it's a more limited number. But like those actual draft dudes are just so freaking knowledgeable about all these people, like 67% of whom you'll never talk about again. That draft time gets a little bit crazy for me. It's 135,000 members on the Texans subreddit. I've been going to the Texans subreddit more lately. It's been a good resource. OJ's son did it. They should have put that in the headline. OJ Simpson, disgraced NFL player, but his son did it. Passed away yesterday. You know, the other thing, though, too, was that I don't know who sucks. Oh, the other thing. This is the other thing I noticed about the OJ Simpson death. It was weird. Did you see the reports yesterday that his body was cremated and that they wouldn't hold a memorial or a public memorial service? I don't know. The only time I, off the top of my head, remember seeing anything about the way a celebrity, I'll say a celebrity, has died, like how the body is disposed of, has been when terrorists get captured, or like bin Laden, right? You get the detailed description of how they followed the Islamic rules and everything for the burial. I don't remember anybody. Like, I find it notable that for whatever reason, they're reporting that O.J. Simpson was cremated. It's weird. Thank you very much, Mr. Rabata, for helping me escape when I needed to. Let's see. Fair, that is an understandable reasoning. I don't have to answer all the questions. Well, yeah, I don't have to answer all the questions, and I think people will respond well to your authentic takes. Yeah, I'll do some AMAs here at some point. Yes, right. The Navy SEALs killed OJ, and then they dumped his body off the side of a carrier. Nothing to see here. He's totally dead. All right, I'm going to get going. I'm going to leave it on that. Please like, subscribe, tell a friend. I'm going to do Sean Pendergast, who did an interview of Mark Schlereth on the Utopia Football podcast. That should be popping up soon. If you don't follow the Utopia Football podcast, please do. Oh, also, check out ownwell.com. I think I called this a sponsored video. I was just going to do Ownwell a nice shout out. If you want to protest your property taxes, go to ownwell.com. Don't do it yourself. I've done it myself. I felt like a damn fool. Like, and on any given day, I feel like a damn fool at some point. I felt like 7 times the fool is when I realized how far out of my element and league I was when I tried to protest my property taxes. Go to ownwell.com. They end up saving money for 86% of their clients. The link is below in the description. The average savings is $1,148. If you go to ownwell.com, it takes 3 minutes to sign up, and they'll start your protest for you, plus streamline the way you do a lot of your other stuff. So ownwell.com. That's ownwell.com. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please subscribe, like, check out my channel for film breakdowns of prospects and on into the season, reactions to highlights and all of that. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Oh, one last thing. This is the last thing. You guys know Brett Coleman. I sent him some stuff. Brett Coleman from the Film Room on YouTube, Texans fan, but also does really good breakdowns, like in-depth film breakdowns. I was just kind of asking him some questions about YouTube, and I sent him some numbers from some of the Bobby Slowick press conferences we do, and he was like, "I've never seen like basically some of the ad revenue that I get from those Bobby Slowick press conferences. Like, he's like, I'd never seen like the price per 1,000 views on a sports video like I get on some of those Bobby Slowick videos. And I'm going to guess that the reason that is that the algorithm respects and understands most of my viewers. Like, I feel like if you're sitting in there and you're watching a Bobby Slowick press conference and watching me blabber on about a Bobby Slowick press conference for an hour, that you're like pretty hardcore Texans fan and you actually have an attention span too, which is the attention span part is big for advertisers because people who with attention spans also tend to, have the ability to buy products and everything. So thank all of you for that. I'm really not doing a whole lot of actual sponsored stuff yet. Just partly because I haven't been consistent enough until recently. But like the Google AdSense revenue, it's interesting to kind of just try to figure out what drives advertising dollars and everything. And people who watch Bobby Slowick press conferences, you guys bank. So congratulations to all of you.